Chapter 4. Dangers of the Road. The wasteland proved a cruel and inhospitable place. I could see them, all of the raping and murdering bastards of Ponyville. I could see them scurry about as they did whatever raiders did at first light. Probably the raping and murdering part. When I had arrived in Ponyville area, the day was already in its waning hours, and I really didn't want it to go dark while I was strolling through ever so casually right through their territory. It was better to wait until morning, so I found a little faraway corner next to the forest, and yet with a decent enough view of the old pre-war town. I hadn't dared build a fire, lest they saw it and decide to finish what their buddies back at Red Rocket could not. It was a seriously miserable night. Cold, though thankfully not wet, and all too long. I had barely slept a wink, and every time I did I would instinctively wake up to every small sound in case it was a raider looking for some easy prey. They never found me. I don't think any of them even strayed particularly far from the dilapidated town, and when the morning came, I was able to drag my weary body up from the mud and continue on my way. I'd gone instinctively to hitch myself to my wagon, before remembering that it'd gone up a whole lot of flames. Maybe it was for the best. Even if I was still pissed about it. Empty. It was just dead weight. At least now I could creep along the very edges of the Everfree forest while keeping it low enough to avoid detection by any pony watching. Goddesses, I could feel some unseen sniper zeroing in on me every second I was near the town. But still, no shouts had arisen, nor had any bullets bit into my skull. The only eyes I ever had looked towards me were from those within the forest. Most benign enough. Birds and the occasional other forest critter that didn't even realize the world had ended. But I would occasionally see the dull green glows from within, trailing me as I crept on past with my magic gently gripping on my 9mm pistol. Whatever those creepy eyes were, they never bothered me. Small favors, right? My little sneak took me past an old battered cottage. Probably a nice little home back in its day. Something to spend your days living in peace. Something I could see myself spending my elderly years in if it were a little newer. Well, almost. Nowadays I'd make it 2 days tops before some horror trampled it down. Dear Luna, I really need to stop thinking about things I'll never get. Most scavengers scrounge whatever they can, trying to strike it rich before finally meeting their end through a whole variety of circumstances, old age being the rarest of them. It's not like I stopped hating my existence during the night. I'd so happily accept a house in New Appaloosa or, Luna forbid, Tenpony. Maybe if Stable 84 was everything I'd hoped. In truth, I think that's the only reason I took this job. My pit book showed me that the stable was further north than I had ever traveled, way out of my comfort zone. But a fully stocked stable. I had always wanted a house, to stop the necessity of tearing up every little shred of scrap metal in the wasteland, something that I never thought I'd actually get, and really, the dream was just a depressing reminder of that. But now, should I dare to get my hopes up? Oh look, I was inside the cottage now. I'm really not sure when that happened, really. Daydreaming in the middle of rarity territory was the stupidest thing I could have done, but I guess this little place just brought my dreams to the surface. Still, stupid. And the inside was a nightmare. Bags of bloody giblets decorated the once peaceful home. Profanity was scribbled in not red paint across many of the walls. Raiders definitely used this place as much as the rest of Ponyville. Not somewhere I wanted to stay for long. My hoof crunched something on the ground. Moving to the side, I glanced at the face-down rotten wood frame that sat on the floor. I really couldn't tell whether it had fallen off and missed the end of the old world, or some raider knocked it off the cabinet out of spite. Either was quite likely. Really, it was junk, nothing of note, and yet I still found myself picking it up with the magic and turning it over. It was worthless, but still. This little place once belonged to some pony luckier than I. It really didn't matter, but I had to wonder who that pony was. Oh. The picture was heavily faded and stained, but the image was still barely visible on the old piece of paper. A buttery yellow mare with a pink mane and a shy little smile on her face. A rather looking evil bunny struggling in her grass as if unwilling to partake in the photograph. And to my surprise, it was a mare I had seen all over the place. Old posters on many old ruins, all marketing some aspect of the Ministry of Peace. Ministry Mare Fluttershy. I never knew she'd lived in such a small town, and an even smaller home. I guess I always imagined the Ministry Mares had lived in huge, lavish mansions in Canterlot, or perhaps Hoofington as the war reaches final days. Shows how much I know. I placed the frame carefully back on the old cabinet where it once sat, releasing my hold on Fluttershy and letting her kind gaze brighten up the raider den as much as it could. It'd be gone again soon, but I would be lying if it didn't cheer me up that little bit, though just a little. I exited the cottage in a hurry. I really had hung around for too long. After leaving Fluttershy's old home, I continued to stick to the edge of the forest until I was clear of Ponyville entirely. With the town and its compliant of raiders left behind, I was able to breathe a momentary sigh of relief. No traveler was truly safe from raiders, but at least now I wasn't on their exact doorstep, and with them left behind, I just had to reorientate myself and locate the nearest pre-war road heading in the direction of Manhattan. This was considerably easier than it normally was with the Pitbuck's map function. I brought up the device, clicking over to the map, and scrolling up past the map markers of New Appaloosa, Red Rocket, Ponyville, and the Everfree Forest until I was centered on my own blip. From there, I could see the diagram of the road. According to the map, the road split a little ways up in a few directions. One headed off in the direction of the Hoof, another towards the glowing pink city of Canterlot sitting atop the distant mountain, and the third seemed to head back to Manhattan's general direction. With my Pitbuck's help, it didn't take long for my hooves to meet asphalt, and for me to trot along the highway towards the intersection I'd spotted. On the way there was another Red Rocket, though this one was burnt-out husk, and a few other buildings dotting the route here and there. It also split off into a few smaller roads every now and then, but I ignored them all in favor of getting to where I needed to go. By the time I reached the intersection, the afternoon was coming around as the world began to slowly get that little bit darker again. I still had several hours before I could even consider making camp, however, so I pressed onwards. I split off down the correct branch of the road, which suddenly seemed to be matching the arrow on my EFS quite nicely. It wasn't a smooth trip. I don't think things like that exist in the Equestrian wasteland, but the occasional Radroach, Bloat Sprite, or Radhog was hardly much of a challenge. Although the increasing lack of bullets was distressing, I really needed to stock up while at 10 Pony, and hope that no big monsters soaked up the rest of it in the meantime. Things cleared out a bit when the road took me up to a relatively intact overpass. I did have to watch my step to make sure I didn't fall through the multitudes of holes to death via gravity below, akin to one half-rotted pony I spotted beneath one such gap. Several vehicles lined the overpass, one wagon dangling precariously over the edge where the overpass had collapsed cleanly in two. Fortunately, some pony had set out a sturdy-looking wooden bridge to allow themselves and others to cross. After some more walking, and with zero things coming to try and kill me, I came to an area where the overpass made a small dip as the second overpass passed overhead.
Better white than striped.
Yep, that was a red bar. I ducked behind one of the hulking and twisted pile of metal that was once a wagon and pulled up my pistol with the safety turned off. I took a few deep breaths as I prepared myself for a fight, taking the moment to better examine the situation. The red bar was joined by 4 green ones. Gunfire was easily audible from just behind my cover, a robotic voice continuing to shoot insults and patriotic nonsense every available moment.
What a glorious day in Equestrian army.
I peeked around my cover in time to see several flashes of green spellfire and a group of 4 scraggly-looking ponies dive for cover. A mare was cowering behind another wagon while cradling a small little filly, while a stallion and another who seemed barely older than a colt traded fire with what my EFS identified as a Mr. Gutsy. All 4 of the robot's would-be victims were Earth ponies, the elder stallion wielding a hunting rifle while the younger blasted at the robot with a damaged combat shotgun. The robot itself was a freakish thing, a hovering ball with 3 lamp-like things for eyes and 3 tentacle-like appendages supporting a claw, flamethrower, and 3 green magical energy weapons respectively. I had seen similar robots, all scrapped during my scavenging career, but I'd never seen a Mr. Handy functioning before, and this one was definitely no robotic butler.
Die, zebra scum.
The Mr. Gusty shouted as a shotgun shell skimmed off its armor, turning its energy weapon towards the younger stallion and firing a volley of 3 green bolts at him. 2 went wide, but the third struck him where his heart would be. bypassing the scraps of leather far more degraded than my own he'd been using for armor. The young pony gave a grunt as he dropped, his shotgun clattering to the ground as the bar on my EFS blinked out. "Lucky!" The mare called out from the fallen stallion's name in immense distress, sobbing hysterically as her grip around the filly tightened. "Apparently not," I muttered to myself, staying hidden behind the cover as I watched these events unfold. The stallion was falling back to the two who were hiding, the Mr. Gutsy following him and staying focused on his opponent entirely. My eyes drifted to the space behind the Mr. Gutsy and the wreckage down the road that could be used for further cover. I could make it. The robot was distracted by the 3 remaining ponies it fought. All I had to do was rush on past it while the robot was distracted, and I would be in the clear. Whoever won their little duel wouldn't matter. I'd be long gone and continuing towards Manhattan. Alright, good plan. I moved a little out of cover, steadying myself on 4 hooves as I prepared for a quick sprint behind the robot and to safety. I was fortunate that these ponies had come across this robot first, and it saved me from a fight. I needed to save ammo after all, and I didn't like the look of that thing's combat capabilities. On 3, I muttered, confident and ready to go. The remaining stallion gave a shout of pain as a swash of flames was blown in his direction, the guy giving to the side even as his hide began to smoke from sheer heat of the attack. The small little filly gave a cry of fear as the robot proclaimed its victory over the zebras, and began to hover up and over the cover that all 3 now crouched behind it. They weren't going to make it. Shit. I entered Sats, targeted something that looked important on the robot's back, and lined up 3 shots. This was stupid. This wasn't my fight. It would be far easier just to go with my original plan and bypass the conflict altogether. I didn't know these ponies. What did I care what happened to them? Calamity hadn't known a thing about me, and he'd come to my aid when everything seemed at its worst. Damn it, Calamity. The spell went to work, my gun shooting upwards and firing 3 precise shots all into the important thing on the robot's behind. There was a small explosion as Mr. Gusty reeled back from the static erupting from its speaking. All of its appendages began to twist and turn towards me, the old war robot sparking for the damage.
Warning, combat inhibitor offline.
The Mr. Gutsy announced.
Die, you strengths.
Uh-oh. I jumped behind my cover as several bolts of green energy whipped right on past, but the Mr. Gutsy seemed to be in a frenzy, and it wasted no time in rushing recklessly around the corner towards me. I brought my gun up and unloaded several bullets into the robot's chassis, but the 9mm rounds did little against its armor. The robot claw shot out and grabbed me by the horn, and oh Celestia did it hurt as those cold metal pincers began to squeeze and twist. My magic shorted out, the gun clattering on the floor as the Mr. Gutsy dragged me forwards and out of cover. Let me go, you fucking tin can! I raged as if my hooves struggled for purchase. It really felt like my horn was about to be torn from my skull. I hadn't expected this thing to be that strong. Why had I decided to play the hero? I bashed against it with my arm with my hooves as it dragged me into the clearing, though it only slammed me into the floor in response. Oh look, little wagons flying around my head. Oh, and yet another thing, a green thing was being lifted into my vision. It was kinda hard to make out, but as I began to regain focus, the pieces came together. No. No, 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 no! I twisted my body despite the increased pressure it gave my battered horn, and desperately kicked out with the hind legs in the general direction of the energy weapon. I think I managed to knock it a little, but the claw was quick to subdue me again, as the green entered my vision once more. Oh, sweet relief, as that blasted robot dropped me to the ground. But there was no time for that. Why had the Gutsy dropped me? A second gunshot. I think I'd missed the first one. Answered that question. The stallion from before had emerged from his cover and fired at the robot with his hunting rifle. The second bullet hit the Mr. Gutsy directly in one of its eyes, tearing the lamp clean off its head. The robot growled.
Libra ambush. Diabolical.
I returned fire towards the stallion, who ducked behind it down again to avoid the fate of Lucky. But more importantly, it was ignoring me again. My hoof touched the base of my horn, and when I pulled it away, I saw blood covering it. My breath became shaky, as I couldn't help but to shiver where I lay. I was becoming aware of the almighty headache I was feeling, and the pitbug was complaining about me getting hurt again. I couldn't even levitate out a healing potion, and I didn't fancy digging through my bags manually while a crazy old robot was wanting to rip me in two. My eyes scanned the ground, and I was trying to ignore the blood now dripping into my vision from my battered horn. Lucky's corpse lay but a few meters away, as did his shotgun. I began to crawl, going as fast as I could as I reached out with my hooves towards the weapon. I managed to grip it, dragging it towards me, just as I felt a claw latch onto my right hind leg. I was suddenly dragged backwards, flipped onto my back, and subjected to the gaze of Mr. Gutsy's 2 remaining eye lamp things.
Where are you going, you villainous zebra?
I put my mouth onto the shotgun's grip and pulled the trigger. At such a close range, the shotgun was far more effective than my pistol. The robot's armor peeled away and exposed its circuits beneath, and even those were torn by the shotgun round and shrapnel from its own damaged parts. The military machine shuddered from the blow, and again as another hunting rifle bit into it. That shot hit something, and the arm containing the flamethrower went dead. The Mr. Gutsy turned to fire a few bolts of magic at the stallion before turning back to me and shooting its claw onto my neck. This time it only met my pitbuck, and I thrust it to the side as I entered Sats once more. I landed a single shot to its exposed inner workings and watched as the spell-guided blast tore into its power core and blew the whole thing apart. And just as well, because I was feeling a bit faint. I rolled onto my stomach, dropping the shotgun and quickly reaching into my bags. I brought out one of the few remaining healing potions, something else to replenish, and downed the whole thing in one gulp. The headache subdued as the dots of my vision began to blink out, and I was able to steady my breathing as I wiped away the blood covering my forehead. Once I was in the clear, I glanced back at destroyed Mr. Gutsy. It was a charred wreck, though its scrap would still be worth something at 10 pony. But aside from the smoldering wreckage, it was hard to ignore the intense sobbing. I turned my head towards the pony family, the mare and filly crying over Lucky's body while the stallion looked at me suspiciously. I really hope he didn't try anything stupid. "Who are you?" he asked. I huffed, getting up to my hooves. "You first, given that I just saved your life." "You're welcome." His glare only hardened. I resisted the urge to groan. "Scrap Heap. My name is Scrap Heap." His glare persisted for a moment or two longer, but then he finally saw fit to talk to me. "I'm Stonemane," he introduced himself. I did notice that the otherwise brown stallion's mane did have a stone-like coloration to it. "You caught us at a bad time." "Obviously," I replied, looking over towards the others. "Your family?" He nodded, pointing at the cream-colored mare with the golden mane, as well as the filly with the slightly paler version of her mother's colors. "My wife, Daisy Dream, my little filly Charm. And the boy?" The stallion looked away, trying to contain his grief. "My son, Lucky. Named that way because he should have died at birth. Damn it. The world just couldn't stand being cheated." I nodded, relaxing my own posture as I looked upon the grieving family. "I'm sorry."
"Why did you help us?"
Daisy blubbered, looking up at me with tears streaming down her cheeks.
"We're not friends, so why?"
I looked at her in pity, mulling over my answer. Could I tell her that I had actually planned on abandoning them unto their fates? Looking at them now, especially the filly, my gut couldn't help but twist in contempt for myself for even considering it. But why had I helped? I had a job to do, one that could set me up more than any other. Any previous time I would have bypassed the incident without hesitation. Every instinct honed by this life in this place had screamed at me to do just that. And my quest for an answer led me right back to the southern accented Pegasus. I'd be a raider's trophy if not for him. He hadn't known me, and had no reason to intervene, but he did, as was his self-professed policy. "I guess I just wanted to do better," I replied to the mare, conflict still raging inside me, as some pony recently did for me. "Where are you heading?" Stone asked me. 10 pony. "Scav?" "Yep, you?" "Same thing," Heap confirmed. "We were heading to Friendship City to do some trading and we could use an extra gun until we reach Manhattan." An invitation? Well, having some pony to back me up did sound appealing, at least for a while. "Alright," I said as I recovered my discarded pistol as well as the shotgun, receiving a wince but no protest from the family. "Alright, I'm in until Manhattan. Then it's a deal." Stonemane agreed before turning towards his deceased son solemnly. "But first, please help us bury him." Well, I guess it was the least I could do. Footnote: Level 3. New perk: Swift Learner. Plus 10 XP whenever XP is earned. there we go. Another action-filled chapter, but with a sad tone. However, I'm glad that Scrap decided to help the family. I imagine that his life was, in fact, very much built on being a little more self-centered, given that he is a scavenger. However, those that don't have to scavenge for my adoration are my wonderful donators. Thank you, Chase LeMaster, HKH4, aka Texture, Triss, The Animated Ghost, Solus, and of course a large thank you to Silent Titan. You guys are amazing and I appreciate your support so much. Also, before I end this out, how was the more focused releases with a 5 videos technically, but 4 real videos of this particular series, and then I'm probably going to cycle to TCP after a memoirs. Tell me how you guys felt about it. Anyways, this has been Firehearth. Have a wonderful day.